Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Sacred Para on this Tuesday. It is early in the morning, and at least here where I'm at is pretty early. It's like, well, not really, really early. It's like mid-early in the afternoon, kind of. And maybe where you're at is done in the morning, and maybe where you're at is in the evening. But I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Today is a different day than what I usually have my storyline content and character development IG live show. But I'm having it early because I'm really trying to gently transition into a weekday. My weekends are a little bit different. As you know, I have my husband and we have 10 children. So weekends are getting a little bit on the fuzzy side as far as being able to have the IG lives. So I'm wanting to transition into the weekday and see how that does. So I do hope that you're able to still join me and be able to, get in on this good stuff together as we've been doing as a family. So as you know, I always say, remember that anyone can write. And I get that from the infamous and wonderful Bob Ross, who said that anyone can paint. And you know how much I love him and how much I love Frida. And this is really the base of what this whole program is about, is that no matter what your background is in writing, if you want to write storyline content for your dolls, and let me get them in there a little bit. There we go. If you want to write storyline content for your dolls, you can do that, okay? I have different guests on this show, and I guess I'm just doing a quick little review for anybody this is your first time joining. I have different guests on this show, and one of the things that almost each guest shares is their background in writing. Some people may be professional writers. They've done this before. They have published works to show this is their thing. There's other people who have never written a lick in their life, but they just really felt a story in the doll that they were holding, and they were like, this story has to come out. And I do want to give some praise while I'm on here, some honor and praise to my girls, because they dressed up Gloria and they dressed up Mini Sheeta, and they are looking great. Look at these shoes. I didn't even know I had these shoes. I'm trying to remember who had these shoes. Hi, my little curvy world. How are you doing, sis? Trying to wave at you, but it wouldn't wave back. Oh, well. Nonetheless, I'm so glad to see you on here. My little curvy world has a show herself every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You want to check it out? She has all kinds of things that you can create and make for your dolls from what's around you. Your cardboard, your glue, scissors. You can make a whole house in diorama. Hi, how are you, Fairy of Wind 2001? Hi, Ethnic Doll. Thank you for joining. And they did do a very good job. Yeah, so like I said, I didn't even know I had these shoes. I've been trying to figure out who had these shoes to where, it was inside my shoe pile. But she looks great. I'm loving it. And look at her. Oh, yeah. She's throwing off all kinds of Vogue vibes. Vogue. Yeah, I went on that Madonna tip. I did. So, all right. So I want to thank you guys again for joining me. And I'm really, really, really excited. Oh, I want to thank my boys too, my husband and my boys, because all of this right here, setup wise, they did. Okay. All I had to do was kind of get my notes together, get my brain together, get all nice and makeup-y for you guys. They hooked all this up. So I want to thank them for doing that for me as well. Yeah. So I have an awesome team in my family, and I thank them for supporting these IG lives and for just rushing and getting up and, stopping with their schoolwork and everything else to make sure that this takes place. It does bless me. Now, without further ado, today we're talking about hashtag setting, plot, character. Now, when I did my study, because, I like to study, but when I did the study, I was like, oh my God, story and plot are such thick contents, such thick topics, such textured topics. We're going to use character on another, IG live show. All right. So we are going to put the character portion for part 2. We're going to focus on setting and plot today. this Saturday coming up, I have an IG Live with a very special guest. All my guests are special, so it's another special guest, I should say. So when we get some free space, we're going to come back with the part 2 of this live. So today's going to be part 1. I'm just giving you guys a little bit of a heads up so that you know what to expect, okay? All right. We're going to talk about setting. Setting. Does anybody have any idea what setting is? I mean, we talk about setting, we hear setting, we watch different movies and programs, and they're like, oh, it's such a nice setting. And we just kind of like go into the formality of it. I'm pretty certain that most of us have had English and language arts classes, right? And they talked about setting, they talked about plot, they talked about character. And sometimes we just memorize the stuff, right? To be able to get done with school, we're like, okay, let's just memorize it, get this test done. Hi, thank you for joining today, Dal Kabai. Dal Kabel. Thank you so much for joining. But sometimes we just learn this stuff for the whole purpose of just getting it done, right? And then there's other times where we may take the lessons and really like bring it into ourselves so we can use this information. So regardless if this is something that you just learned and you just kind of let go, or you never did learn it, or something that you held on to, I think it would be a great time to review it. All right. Setting. Setting is the surrounding and the time in which the events of a story take place. And I want to let you know, usually I have like a whole bunch of notes from this website and that article from here and all this other stuff. Well, I didn't get a chance to do as in depth of a study. And the main reason why I didn't study on that level is because this book right here had all the information that I need. Hi, husband. How are you? My husband is D.A. Weber Sr. He's also Coach Play. So at Coach Play with an I and not a Y. And yes, that is American Sign Language. So an I and not a Y. Coach Play with an I. If you ever need any kind of personal training, someone who can give you encouragement, motivation, that would be the person to talk to. He believes in your dreams. He will hook you up. Go to the website of www.thecoachplayexperience.com and you'll be able to find out more. All right. So right here is the book that we use for our children. And it's everything you need to ace English language arts in one big fat notebook, the complete middle school study guide. This book is awesome. I so wish that they had it when I was going to school. They have it in coding, they have it for math, they have it for science, they have it for world history, they have it for U.S. history. It is amazing. I'm not being sponsored, but if they did want to sponsor, I'm okay with it, okay? Because I really do like their book. It's a very extensive study. Hi, Coach Play. That's my husband once again. So just in case you're online right now and you're like, I didn't quite understand how to link into his Instagram handle, it's right there. It's right there. So just look, right there on the lineup and you'll see Coach Play. So just want to let you know that. All right. Hashtag setting plot character. Setting is the surrounding and time in which the events of a story take place. So there's some examples. There's the book War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy. And I should know his name because he's like an amazing writer. I was all about Tolstoy when I was in school for middle school. I was like, oh, wow. He had like this story about a woman who had been abused by her husband. And it was really, just like a phenomenal thing during that time because he talked about women's rights and like literally she left the husband. And during the time, the setting, the period of time that is set, you don't see women taking a stand in order to say, hey, I care about my rights and I'm going to move out of this house that's violating who I am. And that's why I honor Leo Tolstoy because he was able to stand up for women's rights and really be someone that didn't mind putting like that irritation into the society to make things change. So I give all kinds of props to Leo Tolstoy. But in the book War and Peace, you see that it's set in Russia during the Napoleonic time. So during the Napoleonic Wars is when we see War and Peace taking place. That's the setting. Another example is A Christmas Carol. How many of us love A Christmas Carol? Hi, Monty's World. How are you, girl? Okay, so we all should be somewhat familiar with A Christmas Carol. It may not be your favorite. It is my favorite. I really, really like, I think like the 1935 one or 1950. It's 1950. I think it's like the 1950. Christmas is not Christmas for me without that and without like It's a Wonderful Life, Home Alone, and then that one with Nicolas Cage, Family Man. Okay, Christmas is not Christmas unless I put those on. Hey boo, how you doing? It is not the same. I have to have those movies. So A Christmas Carol is one of my favorites. It gets me to this mindset, like, be giving, be loving, make sure that everything that you do, that you're thinking about other people, right? Because he was such a Scrooge and he just, really wasn't into the holiday. He didn't give a dang about nobody, right? So like that just kind of like helps encourage me. And then it helps me, get into the holiday. And I've watched this since I was a kid. So it just makes me feel, united with the little me, right? Inside of me. Okay, Christmas Carol, which is done by Charles Dickens. It is set in the Victorian era. London, that's the setting. The Wizard of Oz. Who doesn't love the Wizard of Oz? Maybe someone does. I don't want a show of hands because I may feel a little bit offended because that's one of my favorites. I love The Wizard of Oz. I love The Wiz. They're like a dichotomy, but I love them because they tell the perspectives from two different, cultures, and yet in the same hand, right? In the same hand, they're one and the same. And I am glad that I brought up The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz because that actually does fit into plot. And if you stay tuned, you'll find out. All right. So The Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum is set in the fictional land of Oz. Okay. That is where it is set. So settings can include information about the era or period, the date and time of day, the geographical location, the weather and natural surroundings. It can be about the immediate surroundings of a character as well as the social conditions of the society, right? The author sets the scene. They really do. They set the tone, or they create the setting by describing the things that the reader needs to see and feel and hear and touch. Hi, Glamour Girl Barbie. So you're putting all that in there. You're making the scene tangible to your reader, right? And in our case, we got a little bit of a cheat. Okay, because we're not just writing it on paper or in a book, right? And then a person has to imagine it. We have the awesome cheat of being able to use our photo skills, being photographers. I don't care if it's your first year or your 25th year. You're able to use your skills as a photographer and create these awesome diorama scenes with props or without props. And it says so much. It says so much to your audience from an artistic value as well as just for us understanding what does the story really do. What are you communicating? And then we can miniaturize ourselves, right, in our mind to feel like we're there. So regardless if you have it minimally based or you have a whole lot of clutter and stuff in that scene, it says so much about your storyline. And it also says a whole lot about the setting. So it lets your reader experience things as if they were there. They can even taste it. Like I've seen some people do these amazing photos and even like, tutorials and reels of them creating, clay food. And when they're done, oh my God, I want a blueberry pie. I'm like, oh my God, it looks so delicious. Because they made it look so real and realistic to where I can smell the crust while it was baking. And all they were doing was just taking like the toothbrush and, adding in these indentions and then taking the brown and yellow in order to create these pigmentations, doing it with the pastels and creating this wonderful color that comes out of the food. And you're like, oh my God, I know it's fake, but it looks so real. And then when you sit this in a diorama scene and you have the pie in front of your dolls, now I, as a reader, am transported to that diorama scene. So like I said, we get the wonderful cheat of being able to create these storylines that also has a visual context for our readers. That's what I want to say. So I have read some people's storylines, because as you know, I read a lot of different storylines because I love storylines. I love storylines. It's something I enjoy. So everyone has their own personal style. Some people may have more dialogue. Some people may have more of literally a novel type of storyline. Like I've read some people where it's just written from an author standpoint as if I was reading a book. And that's cool. Everybody has their own way of doing things. And I think that's what makes us so unique. So some authors may want to describe what's really going on in the world around their characters so that their readers can be in the present moment of the story and they're able to experience things with the characters. Now, some of us may have more dialogue. Like I have more dialogues. I may add in some things such as, oh yeah, I love the food emojis, my little curvy world. I may add in some things like, my character took a pause right here, a long, awkward pause, or, I haven't done this, but I'm gonna put it on here. He tickles her, and she let out this, yelp. Those kind of things you can add in there, all right? But then there's some people, like I said, who may actually have kind of like a novel that they've written. And so you're entering into that world, not just visually, but also you're having to, read it to really become one with what that author put. I believe that when we talk about narration and authorship, which I am going to be doing a live on that, but narration is something that we see a lot in our black and white movies. When they talk about the time period and they have the author speaking it, if you ever want some tips on that, always look at some black and white movies from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and even like the beginning part of 1960s. And you'll get like a really good idea of that narrator setting the scene before it even happens. So in my notes it says that where we are in time and what big events have just brought us to this moment are often described by the narrator. I played with this a little bit recently when I had Crystal describing to Gloria about the seeing Tony at the wedding, and that was at Vintage Claire wedding. And if you didn't go to the wedding, if your dolls didn't attend, I would definitely say check it out. It was an awesome event. She decked it all out. Very, very great. But I decided to do something a little bit different because I am a huge movie spoof for pretty much anything black and white. Pretty much anything. I mean, there are some like dull movies, all right? But for the most part, your black and white movies are very entertaining. And I have found myself just like connected to it since I was really, really young. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan. Very much. Very much. And I am a huge, Alfred Hitchcock fan. Love his series. Love the hour-long ones. Love the 30-minute ones. Love his movies. All right? And one of the things that I've seen out of a lot of different black and white movies that I watch is that they do take advantage of the narration. And the narration, like I said, really does allow your viewers to be able to know what happened in the very beginning to bring them to that point. An example of this, like I said, with the Christmas Carol movie, is what really does set me into a good Christmas mood. So does the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And at the very beginning of that, you will notice that there is the narration from like the head angel telling, I can't think of his name right now, but telling the angel Clarence, I do believe, telling Clarence about what all has led up to where the main character is in his life, right? Narration, it is a powerful tool when you're able to use it. And if you're like, I'm kind of uncomfortable, I've never used it before, just do it once, do it twice, do it 3 times, do it 5 times, do it 8 times. Just keep doing it until you feel more comfortable and it'll become more of a like natural reflex, right? All right, so I want to add that in there. We also see certain examples like from Alice's Adventure in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And Alice has ducked down into this rabbit hole. She's chasing this elusive, mysterious white rabbit. And I'm just going to read it really, really quick because I think that it is worthy to be read. Like I said, I'm not going to hold you too long. That's why I'm not working on character today, because I was like, wow, there's so much information that we can learn on here and just really, really work together on. Thank you so much for joining. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way and then dipped suddenly down, so suddenly down that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep well. Either the well was very deep, or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well, and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there, she saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. So that's just a small excerpt. And yes, I do read to my kids. But that's like a small excerpt from that book, which was the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So what we're able to notice about the setting is that the rabbit hole is like a tunnel. So when you read this, you want to kind of like infer, what is the author speaking? What is the admin writing about this setting? That the rabbit hole is like a tunnel. It suddenly dips into something like a well, and that the well is, you said it, deep. Time appears to be moving, what? Slowly. It's moving slowly in this world. And it's so dark that it's hard to see below, and the walls are actually shelves with things on it. So that's something that we're able to infer about the setting based off of what our author has written. And that's the same thing with us. Whenever we create these settings, and even if you have, especially like outdoor pictures, oh my God, you're able to really play with those in such a unique way, because you're really taking you're taking us as your audience and your reader, you're taking us on this adventure with you. There's a lot of you who have these awesome, amazing pictures that you do, and you're out and about, you're at a marketplace, and you're just like, hey, I'm here today, I'm at the airport, I'm on a train station, or I'm at a train station, and you show your dogs, and they're, right here, and we can see everything in the background, be it the houses or people behind them, and it's like, wow, we're with you, we're like right with you. And it's amazing. I've actually seen people take advantage of these things and add it to the storyline. So some people may be like, oh, okay, I'm going out of town, I'm just going to show you with myself and my mini, us going out of town, and this is, our field trip. Then there's some people who I've seen who have taken it and really incorporated it into their storyline. And so their doll is meeting someone at the airport. And so you get a chance to see people in the background, and just like this very organic setting. And then in the reading, it'll say, they met at this airport, and there was such a hustle and bustle for people trying to go and meet their planes. And then when they spotted each other, it was just this joy of 15 years of friendship that arose within their belly. Right? So I've seen you guys do that, and I think it's an amazing opportunity to do. Minnie Sheeta, you gotta go back to the couch. All right. I think she was liking it right there, right? But nonetheless, it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. Being able to create this setting. So I want to give you guys 3 questions. All right. 3 questions that you want to ask yourself. This is going to be a live that you're going to want to save. Okay. I want to put that out there. This is going to be a live that you want to save, because the information in here is going to help guide you as you write your storyline, regardless if you've written storylines for years and years and you've got published works. I believe in my heart that the information in this particular IG Live is going to help move you even whenever you have a new character, because it's really easy to have new characters and be like, I don't know where this character lives. I don't know what the climate is like with this character. I don't know if there's any social injustice issues where this character lives. So I believe that the questions right here help us as we create storylines that are pre-existing and storylines that are to come. Here goes the questions. 1, where does the story take place? Where does the story take place? 2, when does the story take place? Because where and when are 2 different things. When does the story take place? We have one about location, and have one about time, right? So the story can take place in Italy in 1963, or it could be 1993. It could be in Boston. Okay, so where really refers to the location. It could be in the basement of a house in Boston, 1972. Okay, and that 1972 really does serve as the when. Okay, and the third question is, what are the conditions like? What are the conditions like in this time and place? And I'm going to give you guys a real quick example of what I feel answers that question in my mind. Really good example is the movie Men in Black 3. Men in Black 3. And I know I put my finger this way and probably look like I said 2, but it's 3. Men in Black 3. Because that whole movie talked about time. And I feel like whoever wrote that one went back and they looked at number 1, they looked at number 2, and they were like, how can we take this and really like mesh it together, right? Where it makes sense, and where, if we left a plot hole right here, we can, sew it up, And I love the factor being that you're dealing with time. You're dealing literally with a time machine. And you have, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to give you all the details, but I am going to put a little bit of a spoiler in there, because Will Smith's character has to go back in time in order to rescue his partner, his friend, his family, his Agent K. I think he's Agent J and you have Agent K. So nonetheless, I love it because they answered those questions so perfectly. They answered the question of where does the story take place? They answered the question of when does the story take place? So we're dealing with location throughout that movie. You're dealing with the time of the movie. So I think the movie was set in the 50s. And we're also dealing with what are the conditions like in that time and place. And the reason why Men in Black 3 came to me was because you have the young man who gives him this time machine capsule. It's kind of like a remote almost. He gives it to Will Smith's character. And he's like, are you sure that you want to go back to this time? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. Because he wants to go get his friend back. He's like, yeah, I'm sure. It's a no-brainer. And he's like, I'm just saying, 1962. I think it was 1962. It's like 50s or the 60s. But nonetheless, he's like, whatever era, whatever time era it was, he was just like, that wasn't a really good time for your people. I'm just saying. And the reason why he says this is because during that time, we had such heavy issues of racism in our country, in the States. So if you're watching this and you're in another location, I don't know what race relations are like where you live, but here in the States, it was a very, very difficult time. And many people would say that we still have difficulties. But nonetheless, we had literally laws of segregation here. And so he says to him, that wasn't such a great time for your people. And Will Smith, if you haven't seen him, look him up, Google him. He's got a book now, so he's pretty much trending, as they say, right? Like, when is he not trending? But he's pretty much trending right now because he has a new memoir, and a lot of people are just, jumping right to it to read it. I'm pretty sure that, my husband and I are probably going to read it as well. But nonetheless, in this particular movie, he and the writers and the producers are addressing the factor being that in that time and space, it was not a great time for Black people. And I loved that they did that. And even when he gets, when he arrives in that particular time, in that era, and he goes to this elevator, and there's a white American male in the elevator, and he's like, my man, what time is it? What's the date? And you can tell the guy's like very uncomfortable, right? And I love that they addressed that. They addressed it in the factor being that, he gets this car and he pretends to be the valet, because during that time period, that was pretty much the only kind of jobs in the United States that our people could really get, are jobs of service. And that was it. And they addressed that. I like the fact of being in the movie when he gets stopped by the police officers and they're like, yeah, this isn't your car. And he does say, he's like, yeah, okay, I did take this car. He's like, but don't think I took the car because I'm Black. I plan on returning the car. So I like the factor being that they still address that as Black Americans, it was not such a good time for our people. So if you set a story up in a certain time period, you have to really research and study that time period. I get kind of frustrated. And like I said, that to me was like a good example of a story. I've seen other storylines. Like I remember there was a Doctor Who story. And I like Doctor Who. I like the Doctor Who's from the 70s with a really long scarf. I think his scarf was like 3 feet long. It was so awesome. He wrapped the thing and wrapped it, right? Loved that particular Doctor Who. The newer Doctor Who's I wasn't so into. My mother watched those episodes. She really did like it. Sometimes she didn't. I'll take that back. Sometimes she was arguing with the TV. But nonetheless, One of the things that was not such a hip thing to me was that they had a black character that went back in time, and when they went back in time, they didn't have no issues. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Because if you would have went back in time, you should have some issues. So I am pretty much a big stickler about that. If you're going to put a movie in a certain time period, make sure that it's congruent. Make sure your storyline is congruent to what was going on. Someone who got in trouble with that was actually James Cameron, I do believe, in the movie Titanic, because they made certain references in the movie. And those references in the movie were really out. It was like, it would have been done in advance, like in the future from when the movie was set. And so people who are big time sticklers about time periods was like, that didn't happen during that time. That happened like 10 years later. You can't put that in there. So you want to research, and make sure that if you're setting something during an actual time period, that you study that time period. Now, if you create this fantastical world like a Wizard of Oz, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right? As long as you're obeying the laws of like gravity and things of that nature. But in the same hand, if it's set during a time period that's mythical, that doesn't even exist, a setting that does not exist but in your mind, and you're transferring that imaginative world to your reader, right? And you can still do that with your dolls, but you're transferring that world to your reader, then there's like there's no bounds. You can do whatever you want, okay? But if you're doing something that's in a realistic time period, you do have to obey the laws of the land, okay? Obey the laws of the land if it's set during an actual time period and an actual realistic location. That would be my thing to say. And now we're going to move on to plot. So we dealt with setting. If you have any questions about setting, you're more than welcome to DM me. Comment below this live when it's done. I don't mind. I'll talk to you about it. Give you whatever information that I know and learn and so forth. But let's talk about plot. So plot is the sequence of events in a story that really does create the action. And when I read up on that, I kind of thought about the movie Lemony Snicket's, a series of unfortunate events and all the wrong questions. And I was really surprised to learn that Lemony Snicket's actual author is Daniel Handler. And Lemony Snicket is the pseudonym. Just like I have a pseudonym as an indie author, my pseudonym is R.K. Lemons-Weber, and that's lemons with 2 M's. I remember growing up and people would be like, lemons are sour. And that was in middle school boys. They're wonderful. But, yeah, so my pseudonym is R.K. Lemons-Weber. And come to find out, Lemony Snicket's Daniel Handler is the actual author. Now, why did I think of Lemony Snicket's? Because that book is plot driven, okay? Especially when you look at the different events that took place in these children's lives from the beginning to the end, is all plot driven. That's really what gets that movie going, the movie and the book, but especially the book, because as we know, books have more details than movies. And even when it comes to us doing our photography, there's only so much detail that we can get in. I mean, realistically, we are kind of limited by, movement. We can get more movement than what we can out of some action figures. So I am not going to knock my dolls at all. I think that they're great for what they do, but I am going to say, it's not the same like dealing with somebody that's real, literally, tangibly real, or who can be real in someone's mind. Okay, because we can really see all the different movements and positions that humans can do in comparison to dolls or an inanimate object. Nonetheless, we do still have to our advantage our dolls. So use them right, okay? Nonetheless, let's not digress too much. Daniel Handler, also known as Lemony Snicket, uses his books, or the characters in his books, to move his books forward. And that's what drives us to flip the page. That's what moves us to keep watching the movie, because of the plot. I don't even think we're concentrating so much on the scenes or the setting as much as we are concentrating on what's going to happen next, right? Yes, exactly. My little Curvy World said, do what we can with what we got. Middle school is drama and mean sometimes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I think that's just part of how it goes developmentally. Middle school kids can be a little harsh, and I think it's because they're still trying to find out who they are, and you're just at that middle part of life. That's why they call it middle school. But yeah, we do what we can with what we have, but we still have this awesome advantage of having the dolls to create this visual world. So the Lemony Snicket book is completely plot driven. We're not focused so much on the setting unless it pertains to the children. Like them having to be in a house that's, just standing on one pole about to fall down. That matters to us, but we're putting so much concentration on will they survive, that you're not really as concentrated on if this is in Boston or New York or Chicago or in South Africa or Russia. You don't really concentrate on that as much as will they survive this, right? The actions in a story help build the drama. What is drama? The drama is the way that events work together to create excitement in a story. And the excitement can be positive, right? Your characters can be having a girls' night out and they're just enjoying themselves and they haven't been out in so long, and you just get a chance to travel with them throughout all these wonderful great events. She gets a free cake, they go out and she goes to the strip club and gets a lap dance. Yes, I did, I made it a little X-rated. She gets a lap dance and so all this positive stuff, and then she had so much fun that she overslept, was late for work, had a hangover, right? All right, she's barfing her face out. And positive, yay, girls' night out. Yes, exactly. My Perry of Win 2001. So it's positive. In the same hand, the excitement could be negative. Like when we talked about the Lemony Snicket's book, these kids, they were orphans. Their parents died. They had to find out why the parents died. In the same hand, they got this greedy man who claims to be their uncle. I think his name's Olaf or something. And he's trying his best to get to the money, even to the point where he's willing to marry the little girl so that he can get the money. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's really a gross story. And it is. But it tells you that some people do whatever they can to get hold to money. And so the excitement, although negative, keeps us glued to the pages. It keeps us watching the movie. Yeah, very distressing. Extraterrestrials, I see the alien on there. Yes, whenever you do with aliens, think Independence Day or the day that the earth stood still, or oh goodness, there was one with Mel Gibson, Signs. Oh, such a good movie. Plot driven, right? We don't care. Once again, we don't care if they're in Wisconsin, if they're in New Hampshire. They could be in Kentucky. What we're looking at is that they are in a house that's being attacked by aliens in the movie Signs. Their house is being attacked by aliens, and you have now placed yourself there, and you're like, oh my God, what would I do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Same thing whenever we watch things about zombie. Oh my God, Resident Evil's coming back out again. I remember the first time seeing Resident Evil. I remember playing the game of Resident Evil. I was just talking to my husband about that. I was like, oh my God. I remember Resident Evil. Couldn't stand the game. Zombies coming up at you. Was not my game. I was like, don't bring the game over my house. When my friends would come over and we would play on the PlayStation. I love PlayStation. I love playing video games. I'm, beyond just my dolls, I'm a huge, video game buff. I've been playing games since I was really, really young. Not games with people's minds. Games on the PlayStation. And I haven't played Wii yet, but we have played Xbox. Excellent, phenomenal stuff. I love graphics. I love fighting games. I love Mortal Kombat. Yes, exactly. Fair wins. I love it. I love it. I remember even when I used to work at one of the, what do you call those kind of things? Not playgrounds, but oh goodness, I can't even think of what they're called, where we have the roller coasters and all that stuff. Has it been that long with the pandemic now? I can't even remember what it's called anymore. But but one of the Six Flags that's over here, I worked it when I was in high school. And I remember when I would get off, right? My mother would come in order to get me, and I'd be like, wait a minute. before I get, going and we'd have to get on a bus and so forth, I was like, let me get on a Mortal Kombat game. And I would literally put so many quarters and, getting the little money coins you have to put in there. I would spend so much of that and play so hard with the joystick that my hand would like hurt on the side when I would get done. It was so important to me to play. It helped me relax and calm down. So I'm like huge on video games. Love it, love it, love it. Nonetheless, when you go back to the Resident Evil game, that game right there kept you connected. The movie itself, plot driven. You're having constant action take place. And it can be so heartthrobbing where you're like, okay, I gotta stop it. So I say this because even whenever you're writing storylines for your dolls, sometimes you do want to consider us as your reader. You may not want to have it so impactful and so thrillerful, especially if you have writing that incorporates zombies and, things jumping out and, all this fear-based stuff. Sometimes you want to kind of like give your reader a little pause so they can kind of, keep their breakfast down or their lunch down. Because it can be so impactful where like your chest is just like your heart's like coming out of your chest. Now, granted, with our stuff, for the most part, we have still shots. Whereas, Resident Evil movie and even like with the game, you have stuff that's just like literally coming at you because it's video based. But I've seen some of you guys' reels, especially during Halloween, and I was like, oh, it was spooky. So I'm not saying stop what you're doing, not at all. But I'm just saying, you want to, consider us. Don't have us, so spooked up that we can't go to sleep at night. All right. So drama can be positive. Drama can be negative. All that action and drama usually works towards a resolution. So part of a story where the problems are resolved is the resolution. So if you have an issue in your story, don't just leave it and keep us hanging, because we'll be like, what's going on? What happens next? We want to know what's happening next. There's a movie or a series actually that my household really did enjoy called Sulphur Springs. And we had just started watching it as a group, and we're like, okay, they got a little bit of something for the kids, they got a little bit of something for us as adults, and we were enjoying it. We were really enjoying it. And it's hard to find something that you enjoy as parents and kids. Usually it's whatever they want to watch, and then you as parents who are adults feel kind of neglected. We want a little MA, we want a little rated R, just being honest, I want to see a little something. I want to see some blood and guts. I want to see a little nudity. I want to see something. So, just being honest. Nonetheless, we watch a lot of cartoons, and that's okay. It's a safe thing to watch, so I'm not against it. But I bring it up because you're wanting to, see something that relates to you and that really does keep you entertained and in tune with what's on the tube, right? If you're going to watch TV, let's be in tune with it. Sulphur Springs, they were good for like the first season. Excellent season. They left on a cliffhanger. I brought this up before during the live. They left during a cliffhanger. I'm like, okay, it's all good. We're just going to like wait this out. Just wait it out. And then we're going to be on season 2. Pandemic hit. No season 2. I'm so disturbed because it left on a cliffhanger, y'all. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? Tell me. That's how I felt. I liked it. It was a kids movie. It's like on Disney or a kids series. But it was cool. They had the whole time limit thing going on. Hi, how are you, Just Louisa? They had like the whole time machine thing going on and the portal. And it was such an awesome series. And then where it left off that, it was like, oh my God, this next season's going to be this stuff. They had good child actors. Like the children actors were really like involved with the storyline where you felt like their acting was natural. I was like, this is pretty good. There's no resolution. Make sure when you write your storyline to give us some type of resolution. I have realized in my own storyline, I'm going to use myself as an example. I was like, I've got these characters and I'm enjoying my dolls so much and the stories that they bring that I was just like involving all these different characters into my Sacred Para community. I'm not trying to just do it randomly because they were all, connected in some way. But nonetheless, I was like, oh, I haven't brought up Penelope and Prudence in a while. I haven't brought up Tony and Nita in a while. And so I like kind of was leaving these cliffhangers and not addressing it, not bringing a resolution to it. Now, granted, because mine is more like of a daytime soap opera, it's going to constantly be these cliffhangers and resolutions that's going on. But it was still important to bring them back into it, right? So within my recent posts that I've made, you now see like Penelope talking about her wedding and getting her wedding dress, and she redid her hair, right? She's got the wedding hair going on. And you see how she treats Prudence like really crappy. And we're also getting like this hint that maybe there's more to Tony than what we know. Like we already knew he had like a bad, attitude about stuff, basically because the post-traumatic stress, PTSD. There we go, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. There we go. So he does suffer with the PTSD, but now we're kind of getting an idea of maybe there's more, or is there? Because we brought Crystal into this storyline. And then, of course, there's the nurse that we're like, what's going on with that nurse? Is she a good person or is she not? Like, what? But it was important to bring them back into the storyline, back into the community, because I felt like that was like a cliffhanger that I was not addressing. So I wanted to address that. All right, so looking at drama, looking at resolution, it's important to make sure that when you have this drama and it's, carrying your storyline, make sure that you also create a resolution to it. And when we look at Lemony Snicket, even in that, although we do see Olaf get out of the case, we do still hear a resolution that he got arrested. He had to go through everything that he did to the children, and, he was put into jail, but he did happen to get off. And so the children kind of, have to create a life and know that this person is still going to be after them and their fortune. And so they still have to, be their own family. All right. When the author creates a plot, he or she is actually creating a chain reaction. And I thought about dominoes and how that creates like an effect. So if you line up dominoes and you flick one, or you have something that hits the first domino, what do the other dominoes do? They're like, and there are people who have created these awesome and amazing dioramas with dominoes, and one gets hit and you just see my husband and I look at them on on his tablet, and it's just like these amazing things that can be created with the dominoes. And I bring that up because that's the same thing that takes place whenever we make a chain reaction, or even like a ripple effect. We can call it domino effect or ripple effect, just understanding that one hit right here makes a cause and effect for the whole storyline. There are causes and effects for the actions that take place. I said during the live, I was like, watch out for Courtney's story. Now, granted, there's been a lot of in-betweens between me trying to post Courtney's story. Her storyline is literally locked in my phone. It's been locked in my phone for over a month. I've been trying to shoot her story out on, post it on here, and I haven't been able to really put her full story out. Just because IRL, in real life, stuff is happening. And then, of course, there's these amazing challenges that come up, and I'm like, okay, let me post this new picture. And the new picture will take over from me putting Courtney's story out. But there's a certain basis of who she is that I'm not a full agreement with as an author and as the admin. But nonetheless, this is who she is as a character. And who she has become is based off of the effects, or off of the causes of her mother and father's relationship. And then you're going to be able to see the effect of who she is. Using Gloria as an example, Gloria is an effect of how her mother was, right? So there's just like these causes and effects that can take place based off of the actions of the other characters in your storyline. And an example would be, like I said, the ripple effect. You throw a stone into the water and you're going to, it doesn't just bloop. Hi, Daily Adventures of Ash Harbor. It doesn't just bloop down in there. It's going to create bloop, 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 a ripple effect. So you want to think about that whenever you do your storylines. If your characters do something, if they interact with other people in a certain way, then consider how it's going to affect other characters in your story. Especially if you have what we like to call a writer's block. If you have something you're like, I just can't figure out where I'm going to go with this, go back and look at your storyline. See what your other characters have done or not done in a story. Did they say they were going to call someone and they didn't? Well, if they said they were going to call another character in your story, thank you. Hey, sweet ladies, look beautiful today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And they said they're going to call someone and they didn't. Now you have an opportunity. Like if Gloria says she's going to call Minnie Sheeta and she didn't. And I'm kind of like, I want to do something with Minnie Sheeta. I don't know what to do. I haven't really used her in my storyline. Maybe I can kind of show how she's responding or reacting since she didn't get the call from Gloria. Like, is she okay? Like, did everything work out? Or is she kind of like, oh, wait, why didn't Gloria call me? I need to know what's going on. And is that, think about how we do as humans. When we don't hear from someone and they said they're going to call us back, there's an infinite path of ways that we can take it. We can take it as like this person must have got really, really busy. So everything's okay. They're just busy. Or they're too busy to even begin to consider me. And I don't like that. I guess they don't like me. I thought they liked me. But now that they didn't call back, I guess, maybe we have this issue and I didn't know that we had an issue. Maybe somebody said something about me. Now they don't like me. Another way that you could look at it as, they're too busy for me. Or it could be, I guess everything's going really good for her and I'll give her a call back and check in on her. It's not a real big deal. She doesn't have to call me back. It just depends. There are infinite number of plot lines that you can take just from, hey, Gloria's supposed to call back. I know I have so much I need to write. I need to get going, but I've been busy with orders, but I'm ready to get that blog going. Yes, I'm so glad you said that. Daily Adventures of Ash Harbor. Check out her page as well because she does have a blog that she does, and she also has the Mandy's Couture store. Mandy's, put the name, you and anyone else who has a store. I know that My Little Curvy World also has a store, the MCW toy store and hobbies, I do believe. So feel free to put your information in this link and I'll say it out loud as well, because with our lives that we do, our live shows, they don't really record the words that's text on the actual live show. So I will say it out loud. So if you're listening to this right now or you come back and you listen to it later, someone else comes and listen to it, you'll be able to hear what it is. So the handle is at Mandy's Doll Couture, Couture. If you're still listening, My Little Curvy World, put your name on here as well. And her story page is at Ash Harbor Story. So definitely check out her story. She has some amazing characters as well. So I hope that you're able to listen to her, check out her page as well as check out My Little Curvy World. And she also has IG Lives that she does as well. So there are infinite number of plot lines that you can take. The main path that your story takes is the plot line, and you can just do all kinds of things with it. Like I said, if she's supposed to call her back and she does it, she can take it in a real negative way, or she can take it in a positive way. She can be like, maybe I'll call her, or she may be like, I'm not going to call her because maybe she's busy. She has clients, it's because she is a therapist, so I'm not going to call her. I'm just going to kind of like keep on going on with my life and deal with it. It's up to you, right? It's up to you as the author. You create it. So what he or she creates can reveal the meaning and message behind the story, as well as, I'm going to take it a step further, it can really describe who your character is. Because if she takes it negative and she feels in her head like, well, Gloria's too busy to talk to me, and I'm thinking that someone may have said something negative about me and that's why she's not talking to me, that kind of shows her insecurity. On the other hand, if she takes it and she says, oh, shoot, I'm not really bothered by that. I imagine that she got busy. I'll just give her a call. I know she said she would call me, but people get busy. People have things to do. She's got a husband. She's got her own life. I'm not mad about that. That's my girl anyways. I'm going to give her a call. Then it goes to show how she has, great self-esteem and she doesn't really think about the negative and she's more of a positive-based person. So the way that your character perceives a thing says a lot about who they are as a character. All right, so almost all plots follow this basic sequence, which was first described by the German novelist and playwright Gustav Freytag. I'm hoping I say that right. Freytag. And it's sometimes described as the Freytag's pyramid. So here you go. And I'm actually going to show you the picture. Like I said, this is an awesome, amazing book. My children have it. I'm always trying to encourage them, like, read it, because there's so many good things in here. Daddy and I both tell them to read it. So right here, you're going to see this pyramid. The first one is the exposition. And the author sets the scene and explains what's going on in the exposition. The second one is the rising action. It's a series of crises that lead to the climax. The third one is the climax. And we're thinking almost like a mountain. The third one is the climax. The most exciting moment of a story where both people and events change. The fourth one is the falling action, the events that follow the climax. And the fifth one is the resolution, which is the conclusion in which all the tensions of the plot are resolved. Now, if you have something that's like a daytime drama, like what I do, then you're going to constantly have this flow. And it can almost go backwards even sometimes. But it is definitely a mountain. And it's also like kind of a heartbeat. This is where, it can be like a blood pressure. All right. Because we're seeing it go up. But it's building to going up to that highest point, the pinnacle of the storyline, and then it drops down, and then it just kind of plateaus, right? So whenever you have that resolution, you're able to see your characters hopefully just kind of take a deep breath, as well as your audience. I was like, oh, so glad that got dealt with. I think about the soap opera Guiding Light. Oh my goodness, I loved Guiding Light growing up. It used to come on at 4 o'clock during the weekdays. Favorite characters were Reba. And I'm trying to think of Reba and Josh. Oh my goodness, I love those two. I thought they were just like the perfect match. They had such great personalities. They looked great together. And you would have situations that would arise like Reba's going to take a trip. Oh no, Reba's missing. Oh no, she's missing so long that we're going to say she's dead. And Josh is just like, what am I going to do? I don't have her in my life. And then some other woman comes up that's supposed to be like Reba's sister, and she's consoling him. And then they look into each other's eyes, and they got Google eyes, and they're like talking about Reba because of this whole thing called, what is it, like remorse relationships or something like that, or grief relationships, where if you share a common bond with someone who died, and then you form a relationship based off of the factor being that you both remember the person who died. And so now you have like this unique bond. And although you're both together, the person that died is still like a part of the relationship. So you kind of see that take place where he gets involved. I do believe, if I remember right, this is like elementary, middle school. So I'm trying to like shine the mind here in order to get the full memory. But they get together, and then you see Reba come back. And she's kind of like, she's had amnesia. She doesn't even remember Josh. And Josh is like, oh my God, you're back. He thought he was seeing a ghost, and he realized it was her. And then you get through all this drama, and he and his sister end up breaking up, his sister-in-law. And now he and Reba get back together. And it feels like, as the viewer, because you're like, I wanted them to get together the whole time. Hi, Bars for Us. Hi, Ariana. So you're just feeling really, really good because it's been resolved. Make sure that your storyline has some type of resolution. Don't leave us hanging. Even if you have a daytime drama kind of deal, or you have the soap opera similar to what I do, make sure that you put a resolution. If you have a rom-com where it's like a romance comedy, put a resolution there. Hello to you too. Put a resolution there. So I do want to put this out there as a just briefly, and then I'll be closing up my live show. But just really briefly, I want to give you guys a little bit of something to think about as you write, because we're all thinking creatively, and sometimes we can get creatively exhausted. And sometimes you can see something on TV and be like, oh, I want to use that storyline, but I don't want to seem like I copied. Or you can read something in a book, like my favorite writer and playwright of all, which is William Shakespeare, and you'd be so inspired by what's written that you're like, oh, I want to use that, but then you're questioning yourself on, should I use that? I want to encourage you that it's okay to be inspired and use a storyline that's similar. I love Elizabeth Taylor. There's been so many movies that she's on. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And I'm like, I want to write that. I want to write something similar. You can write something similar and just change it up. Put yourself into it. Don't plagiarize. I'm not telling you to plagiarize. I'm so against plagiarizing. No plagiarizing. No plagiarizing. Don't copy someone else's thing. But you can see how they structured it, be inspired by it, and put your own twist and flavor on it. Does that make sense? Put your cilantro on it. Put your hot sauce on it. Put whatever you're about on it and make it yours. All right. So, classic plots. There are all kinds of plots, but there are some really big patterns that you'll see over and over and over again. So, some classic plots are stories that have the same basic sequence of events, and they appear in many different stories throughout history. Classic plots can come from myths from around the world. It can be traditional stories such as fairy tales and folklores or folk tales, like the ones collected by the Brothers Grimm or invented by Hans Christian Andersen. Religious works that come from sacred texts like the Bible, the Quran, and other sources like the hard-boiled novels and adventures or romances, where many authors tell the same story with different details and different characters. Yum, cilantro. Yes, yes, yes. It's bars for us. I love cilantro. I think of Hallmark when I say this. I think of Hallmark and Lifetime romance comedy movies. Oh my gosh. I'm like, how many times have we seen the person who moves away from the city that she grew up in, right? And then she gets overburdened from the job that she's working at, or her boss assigns her this assignment to go back to her hometown. In her hometown is a guy that she grew up with, that she had a crush or they used to date, and now she has to go right back there and confront him or bump into him, and now all these old feelings that she used to have comes right back up, and it comes right back up for him, and they're having to, negotiate with who they are now, to, if I want to be with this person now. And then they leave, they go right back to their new town that they live, and they're thinking about the other person, and then they're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore, I have to be with you. And then they go back to the hometown to get married. Over and over and over again. So many times is it done in Hallmark, especially with a Christmas setting. I mean, Hallmark and Lifetime, you can get Christmas movies all year long. Okay, and sometimes it can get exhausting, but in the same hand, I will admit, you have so much just tragic stuff happening in the world, especially when you turn on the news, to where sometimes it's almost like a breather from having to watch so much just crazy stuff, to where you're just like, okay, I'll watch this plot all over again. I know it's been done like 15 times or more, but I'll go ahead and watch it. I mean, shoot, this time you got the girls from Sister Tia and Tamara. Okay, I'll watch it. Maybe they'll do a little bit something different. Oh, okay, you got that one guy that's the singer with that boys group. Okay, let's watch it. Let's see how he does this time. So you watch it because you're just like, why not? So I'm not going to knock it at all. I think that it serves a purpose, regardless if it's done before. But they definitely use that pattern over and over and over and over and over again. So it's the same thing with you. You could easily do that as well. You could see something that they have, be inspired by it, make it your own. Or you may, in your own storyline, have certain characters where people are going, I could have sworn that, like, you're, Grayson, I like that name, don't take it. Your Grayson and Taylor. I could have sworn they just had like that same kind of situation happen that Amber and Joe are going through. They're both in my community. I can use them any way I want. But because of how Amber's personality is compared to Taylor, it's going to be a little bit different. Like maybe Taylor was just like, oh, I can't live without you. Whereas Amber's like, I've got this career right here. I'm doing really, really good. This is not going to work. And so she goes right back to her hometown. And then Joe is like, I can't live without her. And so he flies to where she's at. And he's like, he professes his undying love to her. And they get together and he stays where she's at. So you can still use a similar storyline with the same, with different dolls in your own community. So what? It's your thing, but the personality of each character is going to receive and perceive the situation different. That's what I have to say. All right. So an example would be a plot about children from warring families who happen to fall in love. It's been repeated over and over and over and over again. Can anyone name that movie? If you're on here right now, have you seen or read a storyline about children from warring families that are divided? They're warring against each other, and those two fall in love. I would say it's been over and over and over again. You don't have to agree, but if you do agree, I'm pretty certain that you thought about Romeo and Juliet by the infamous and wonderful William Shakespeare. I told my husband, and I'm just going to put this out here. I told my husband, I said, if we would have been born during the same time as William Shakespeare, I was like, you would have a run for your money. I love William Shakespeare. I love William Shakespeare. He's just like a phenomenal writer. There's, I had a crush on him like when I was really, really young, and I was reading like Romeo and Juliet and The Merchant from Venice, and reading his sonnets and stuff and getting wooed right from this man that's like dead like centuries before I even came in to being here, and I was just like, wow. So my husband already knows where I'm at with that. I'm like, William Shakespeare, he's the stuff. Nonetheless, that happens to be a storyline. Yes, Romeo and Juliet, done over and over again. And we see it, taking place in medieval Verona and Mantua in Italy. The modern version of such would be the West Side Story. And that's an American musical based on Romeo and Juliet. And instead of these star-crossed lovers that are torn by these warring Italian families, we see that they're torn between these New York City gangs. We also have like the movie Oh that was written and done as a movie based off of Romeo and Juliet. And we have, there's like a new version of the Romeo and Juliet storyline. And I asked my kids, I asked my daughter actually, I was like, what storyline is that? What's the name of it? And she was like, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what it is. Because they haven't watched it. Because it's really for like older teens, I believe, to watch. It seems like it's going to have some stuff in it that I don't want my kids to watch right now. Or I should say our kids to watch right now. So we haven't seen it. We only saw the trailer. And I can't think of it. And I think it's Latina. And I think it's a Latino and a Latina. And so it's more culturally based as far as being in the Hispanic culture, which I think is awesome. But still based off of the same plot, where you have the star-crossed lovers, and they're young, and the families don't get along, but yet they're in love with each other. Don't be afraid to reuse a storyline, or to reuse a plot for your storyline. There we go. So there's another plot about a brave upstart who stands up to a much stronger enemy and wins. We've seen this appear over and over and over again. We've seen it appear in biblical context with David and Goliath. David's a young Israelite. He stands up to the giant Goliath, and using only a slingshot and a stone, he brings him down. In a modern version, there's the movie of Mr. Smith, who goes to Washington. A young congressman stands up to a much more powerful role and panel of politicians, and he defeats them. So it's done in a different context, but still the same plot structure. Another example of a plot structure be the plot about an artist who creates an image of a woman and then falls in love with the image he made. It's been used over and over again. If you look at it from a mythological version, you will see in Ovid's poem of Metamorphosis, there is a sculptor who falls in love with the actual statue that he carves. And in the 80s version, when I grew up, and anyone else who's an 80s baby, we saw the movie Mannequin, where he had the mannequin. He worked at a retail store, and he had the mannequin. He dressed the mannequin up, and he found himself falling in love with the mannequin. And before he knew it, the mannequin became real, and he was in love with her. Right? Another modern version is in the musical My Fair Lady, and there's a rich man that helps a young lady from the streets become his ideal of the perfect woman. Then he falls in love with her, which also made me think about the movies in the 80s, late 80s, called Pretty Woman, in which she is created into the ideal woman that Richard Gere wanted, but she started off as a prostitute. And there was a lot of females that thought, I can walk on the wrong side of the street and become the perfect woman from a man. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm just saying that because of that, it became more of a tangible idea to be a woman, that was of a street life that becomes a perfect woman than just being a mannequin that became a perfect woman, or a sculpture that becomes a perfect woman. So we see how the times change the context of the plot. So from a sculpture, it went from a mannequin to now being something that was more real in both of those movies. So how an author creates a plot is that they compose a plot piece by piece with each scene. And if you're doing a poem, if you're making a story out of a poem, there's actually someone on here who does an amazing job of taking her dioramas and her pictures, and she attaches a poem to them in her caption. And the caption are, of course, like the words that's below your posts. And she will put a poem with it as the poem relates to what the picture has. Amazing job. Great job. So if you have a stanza, you can always tell the story through a poem. And a stanza is a group of lines that compose the basic segment of a poem. So your scenes make up the story, including all the pieces of the plot. You have the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then the resolution. You can chart the plot of a story you read or build your own story by creating a plot diagram, which is similar to the plot pyramid and sometimes called storyboarding. Some of us are familiar with storyboarding. You may have seen it sometimes if you're watching a lot of cartoons like my husband and I do with our kids. At the end of your movies, in the menu section, it'll sometimes say storyboard, like we watched Princess and the Frog. And so they gave you an opportunity to see the storyboard that was attached to it so that you could see how they created these stories, when they were sketches and when they had to use the producers for the voices before they actually brought in their actors, and what that raw image of it was like before it really did become this animated fantasy, right? Storyboards. Storyboards are so important. Storyboards are creating a series of drawings that represent a plot. So sometimes during my lives, you'll hear me talk to someone and I'm like, do you script ahead? Or do you, write it as you're posting? Do you, go ahead and write the dialogue and the story? And some people some people go ahead and write the plot and the dialogue and everything else. They do that ahead of time. They script it, and some people don't. Well, the scripting is still actually similar to storyboarding, especially if you deal with fashion with what you do. Because then you're going to kind of like create these images of what your characters, your dolls are going to wear right here, and what she's going to say or he's going to say to the other characters. And then you just kind of, keep it going from there. So a storyboard really does help you to organize your thoughts. I talk about journaling. You can always take a journal, which, hey, on Amazon, you'll find As Sacred Pair Presents. There's the journal, there's the planner, there's the character of origin journal. You can find things like that to kind of help you as tools as you create your storyboards and scripts. That's something that helps you stay organized as the administrator, as the admin and writer. Okay? So it's very important to have something that helps you stay organized with your stories, especially when you start having multiple characters. It's so easy, guys. It's so easy to get thrown off and kind of be in this forest of thought. And these tools are there to help you stay organized. A plot diagram shows the plot of a story scene by scene, or the plot section by plot section. Keeps you focused on what's going to happen next and what happened before. Okay? So each scene propels the plot forward to the climax and allows your story to move forward. Okay? It shows everything that unfolds before the falling action and the resolution. Other parts of the plot. Scenes build the structure of a story, but this fairy tale contains other elements for the plot, such as characters. And we're going to talk about that next time. Like I said, this coming up Saturday, I will be having an amazing guest. All of my guests are amazing. This is just another amazing guest who we're going to be able to talk to. He is a local director and producer. He's got a movie coming out, and I'm really, really privileged to be able to talk to him about storyline content and character development, and just getting his perspective of how he writes and produces, the amazing characters that he does for his films. Nonetheless, characters is something that I want to talk about in our part 2 of this particular IG Live story. So this is part 1. We're going to have part 2 on another day. But characters, your plot is what happens to the characters in a story. But who a character is also affected by the plot. They work both ways. So you want to consider that as you write your scenes. Consider that your plot affects the story and that your character is affected by the plot. Example would be the queen in an Indian folk tale. She believes that the yogi said to her is true. And this was just like an example that they gave about a particular storyline in the Hindu culture, in which there's an Indian queen and a yogi says some things to her, and when she realizes and she takes it as factual, and she believes it, but she imagine if she had been stubborn instead, like if she hadn't really believed what the yogi said to her, what would that story have been like for her? What if she refused to do what the yogi said? This might be a very different story. Now, in my background, we have something called prophecy and prophetic words that come from prophets and prophetesses, and every culture is different. It just happens to be part of what my background is. And I was actually introduced to this kind of language and world through my relationship with my husband. I had never known anything about a prophetic word or prophetess or prophetesses, and even having read the sacred text of the Bible, I was just kind of unaware, right? And even when you think about like the Quran and so forth, I was just very unaware. But the more and more that I read the stories of these different prophetess and prophetesses and really did learn and study the context of the era and the history, I was like, wow, this is really interesting, and I believe it to be so. So with this particular story, and I'm so sorry I don't have the name for this particular folktale, but there's a folktale about an Indian queen in which she receives a word from the yogi and she believes what is said. But it also states, what if she didn't believe it? What if she would have been stubborn and it would have been harder for her to take in what was said? What would the story have been like? Like we said earlier, there are infinite plot lines that you can do as the author, narrator, as the administrator. You can do whatever it is that you want with the story that you're creating. I recently heard, and it was so interesting. My husband and I, we listened to it together. Recently heard our man Stan Lee talking. And anyone who doesn't know, Stan Lee is one of the creators of, I would say, the greatest comic book universities ever. Marvel University. Yeah, the Marvel Universe, okay? And it's nothing against you DC people or anyone else, okay? Because I still watch Superman. I know, Spider-Man. I'm like so trained for Marvel. But I still watch Spider-Man. Superman. There you go, Superman. And, Aquaman and Wonder Woman is phenomenal. Now, I will say, DC, you did excellent treatment with Wonder Woman. I don't know if we have anyone comparable, although I love Black Widow. Captain America, Captain Marvel, she's a cool character. But Wonder Woman is just phenomenal. Just real talk. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. So I'm not knocking DC. I'm not like one of those people that's like, oh, I hate DC, blah, blah, blah. No, DC has great points. Okay, like I could argue for DC just like I could for Marvel. It's just that I really do like Marvel. I really do. I love me some X-Men. I just, I'm truly into the Marvel universe. But Stanley was asked during an interview prior to him dying. Was asked, in a fight between like Superman and Spider-Man, who would win? And he's like, I'm constantly asked this. He's like, all the time I'm asked, and people are like, this one has this strength, and this one's good right here, and this one's able to do that, and I know this one would win because he does this, and this one, his shortcomings with, his kryptonite, kryptonite is a weakness for him, and this one's this, and he's like, quite honestly, and I'm all ears. I'm like, who would win? I'm thinking that he's gonna give me the answer. Okay? Like, I was fully all ears. My husband has it on his tablet. We're listening. He says, the one who wins is the one that the writer wants to win. He's like, stop asking me these stupid questions. It's whoever the writer wants to win. Why do I bring this up to you guys? Because your story is totally up to you. Even when I gave you the example of the Indian queen, and she receives the prophetic word from the yogi, and she decides to believe it and go with it, what if she didn't? What if she was like, oh my God, that old fool doesn't know what he's talking about? How would that storyline go? You as the writer get to decide that. There is no formula. It's whatever you feel like. There's been so many times I've taken pictures and in my mind thought, this is how the picture's going to go. Like they're just going to have like a really friendly interaction. And that's it. I'll give you an example real quick. Like I said, I do want to end this live real soon. You have Gloria, she's talking to Crystal, who happens to be the wife of the fallen soldier, Auric. And I had really intended for that to just be like a real quick, simple conversation. And, maybe that would be it. That one time of them talking, done. I had no clue real talk, I had no clue that one conversation would tie into Tony and then tie into his past and how Auric died. So I allow the storyline to just kind of like, just flow out of me. But I, as the writer, had made the decision to allow it to flow in that way. So although the pictures were already done, I decided, hey, I'm going to mesh these other pictures and make them black and white, make them look like they were really old, so that it can fit for what's being said right here in this particular dialogue, in which Crystal is breaking down. Now, the wonderful thing that took place for me, I heard a singer say, it just keeps happening, it just keeps working together. What really worked together for me was that Adventures Claire had the wedding, and I was able to fit that in so beautifully to the actual storyline of her husband being killed with the missile that hit the Humvee. So it worked out for me. It literally worked out for me in that way. Hi, Danny, Poppy, and Barbie. Thank you for joining. And thank you, Life 6 Scales, for joining as well. So it worked out for me to be able to do that because I allowed the story to just unfold. So allow your story to unfold. Allow yourselves to make decisions that's going to allow the story to unfold the way that it needs to for your characters. So now I have a new character with Crystal that you're going to be able to see again. And I like how Crystal's being used for the storyline. For me, just allowing it to go down the path that it did, it created other connections for me as the writer and as the administrator to apply to the storyline. So you do want to consider that. Don't be so strict on yourself. Even if you took pictures and you thought, like, this is the way the storyline is going to go, and then as you post the storyline, there may be an event that you want to participate in, like I did, allow it to flow. Allow it to flow, because as it flows, you're going to end up creating a storyline that's much more richer in context than what you had expected to do from the very beginning. Allow it to flow. Okay? And then just lastly, what I want to talk about is dialogue, because dialogue is so important. I am an indie author. I'm also a playwright. I am really, really big on dialogue. As much as I am, and dialogue can be in the things that's spoken as well as the things that's not spoken. Having those pauses and those long, awkward silences speaks so much. Body language speaks so much. There was a play that I was able to do with my husband involved during that play. It was such a powerful play because we really didn't speak a whole lot. We spoke during the play, but there was just a lot more body gestures and facial gestures, facial expressions that were used, and the scenery was changed often, which also spoke to what the characters were expressing during that time. And we kind of stepped into the roles because I didn't have any actors for that role. And on top of that, I felt like the ones who would really give that particular or those particular characters justice would be my husband and I. So I'll admit that I kind of looked for actors for that particular play. And then in a way I didn't, because I was like, okay, we put it out there for actors. Okay, shut down. And it's been open for 2-3 days. My husband and I are going to do it. And, it allowed my husband and I to grow as a couple. When you get involved with each other, I guess it's like a little tidbit, a little nugget to throw out there. When you guys get involved with each other's gifts and your talents, you get involved with your partner's gifts and talents. Your partner gets involved with your gifts and talents. One, it opens up the doorway for you to learn new things about yourself. And then two, it helps you as a couple to just really gel together. And then you can create these awesome, amazing memories. And so we're able to look back and be like, wow, we did this play together. We did this play together. Or we, I talked to you about this, and you're able to offer me this amazing perspective. Even to this day, it's the same thing that happens. Even with my dolls, it still happens. Got a new doll that he gave me, and I was like, what am I going to do with this doll? And it's like, oh, he gave me the name. He was like, that could be such and such, and that's, Kai's brother. And I'm like, yes, that works out great. So it's important to listen to each other, because you can end up getting a lot of great ideas for settings, plots, and characters that you didn't think about. I even had something recently happen with my mother, who gave me a redhead. She gave me a couple of fashionistas and gave me a redhead Barbie that you may have seen on the reel. And I was able to switch out the heads and make her movable instead of being a stiff fashionista. I think her arms are like this, actually. She wasn't right here. She was right here. I think it's like more old school, right? This is like our 80s Barbies. Right here and right here. A lot of the fashionistas nowadays are like right here. So her arms were real stiff, made her movable. And my mother was like, oh, she looks like a Lucille Ball. And Kid's like, yeah. My girls, yeah, she looks like Lucy. Love Lucy. She's one of our favorite characters. I've loved her since I was a kid. And I was like, you know what? Maybe she'll have the name of Lucille, So it's important for us to kind of listen to each other. Hi, thank you for joining. Because we can get a lot of great ideas that we didn't think of. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great thing. That is a great thing. Getting ideas, because it can help generate something else. Okay? So dialogue is important. I am huge on dialogue. Things that's said and things that's not said. Dialogue. It may not seem like we're doing much when we talk. But the things people say can make other people mad. It can make other people fall in love. It can make them spill secrets. And more. Use your dialogue. Use your dialogue. Have your characters speak. Don't silence your characters, especially if you have a character who wants to talk. Have you guys noticed, like, they look like they're getting closer together? They're like, hey, how are you? They're like loving on each other. Okay, sisters, there you go. This is Gloria and Minnie Shudo right here. I did not position them that close. Like, I put them next to each other, but they're like getting each other a little love there. Like, hey, it's okay. Like, they're really happy to be co-hosts, and I'm glad that they're here. I'm glad that they're here. I know it was like off of the subject matter, but I happened to look through the screen, and I was like, I didn't position them like that. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see my co-hosts are enjoying each other. That's a beautiful thing. You want to have good chemistry with each other. So I'm glad that they're getting along. So the dialogue can really, set the scene and really push and move your plot along as well. So even if you're in a position where, because we're all in different positions, maybe you don't have a diorama, maybe you don't have a lot of props, just realistically, some people have plots up the wazoo. Okay, they got rooms full of plants and little tiny, ornaments and books and magazines and coffee and, all these little tiny trinkets to make their room feel more like a lived in home. But maybe you just started off, or maybe, you've been in it for a while, but you have in real life issues. You got bills and you got this and that, and you can't really afford to buy those kind of props, and you may not have the time to make those kind of props. Don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you. Use your dialogue. Let your dialogue move that story along. There are times when I don't really have time to, really put the props and stuff in the storyline the way that I want. So I just use my dialogue to fully express what is being said. And sometimes less is more. That's what I always grew up hearing. Less is more. I know nowadays, and I'm just going to deal with the makeup tip, and this is not an insult or anything to anybody else, but I know nowadays people really do layer on makeup. Like I said, it's not anything against anyone. If you put, a lot of layers on for your makeup, I say kudos to you. If that works for you, do your thing. I'm not really into using a whole lot of makeup, and I do enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I'm not against it at all. I enjoy it. You can see I got me on some makeup, right? But I don't spend like a lot of time doing like the highlighting, contouring, all this stuff. One, I have to still thoroughly learn it. And then two, I'm like, it's just not really my thing. I'm more into like the less is more. Just like if I go out, less is more. You're not going to really see me wear something, like a dress up to my thighs, like a thigh high dress, and some, little, heels and so forth. Maybe when I was 21, maybe, I don't know. But right now, no, it's just not my thing. Less is more. Like, I'm gonna, be wearing what I'm wearing right now. Like, I got a full body jumpsuit on. I got this, jacket on. So that's just where I'm at with it. Less is more. Everybody's different. Do your own thing. I'm not against you. If you love contouring and highlighting, hey, send me a DM. Teach me some things. If you can teach it to me and I can get it done in like 10-15 minutes, I'm with it. But if it takes a little bit longer, I may not be able to do it. My husband and I got 10 kids. I got a 6-month-old now. I don't have that kind of time. But if you can do it, I am not against it at all. I love it. I literally love watching makeup tutorials. I think it's great. My book and stuff fell. But I think it's great, but it's just not my thing for me, because I do happen to go with less is more. If you don't have a whole lot of props, if you don't have a diorama, if you don't have a facade, if you don't have a dollhouse, don't let that stop you. You can take natural pictures. You can go outside, take some outdoor pictures if you're still feeling uncomfortable. How about taking pictures outside? You may not live in a neighborhood that allows you to take pictures outside. All of us live in different areas. You may live in an area where that's just not a good thing to do. Maybe you can't be outside more than 2 minutes without, something dangerous happening. I don't know. I mean, just being real. Everybody lives in different areas. We don't want to sit here and act like everybody has a cul-de-sac. Not everybody lives in a cul-de-sac. Some people may live somewhere where, being outside, you got to be really, really careful of your safety. And it's beyond just, the COVID. It's like, I got to watch my back and make sure that I'm taking the proper steps so I can get back home safe. So you can't just sit there with your camera phone and be like, snap, snap, because you got to make sure you're paying attention to what's going on behind you. So even if you have that kind of situation going on, just know you can take some really awesome pictures working off of what you have and creating a dialogue, because a dialogue will then push your storyline forward. An example of that would be even with, I have a few of them really in my mind. But if I use Mama Catherine for an example, during the Halloween series, there was a photo challenge from the Dalai Lama. Check out her page. That's THA Dalai Lama, the Dalai Lama. And she had a mirror challenge. Very awesome. I already had in my mind how I wanted to do the image. Just so happens to be that Barb for Us did that particular picture. And she's on here. And I was like, I didn't see it like afterwards. But that was literally like how I saw that I wanted to do my mirror image. But during a conversation that I had with At Life in Daldom, check out her page. Check out At Barbs for Us. Check out At Life in Daldom. We were having a conversation. That's my soul sister. And we were having a conversation and she was like, why don't you have a picture where, and you can check out that live. And check out the live that I've had with my little curvy world. Check out the live I've had with Bars for Us. These are all recent, in fact. Check out the live I had with Life in Daldom. She was like, hey, why don't you have something where, we can get a better idea of who Mama Catherine is. Like, have Mama Catherine speak. I was like, man, I really hadn't thought about that. She was like, yeah, maybe she can be talking to the mirror and we can get a better idea of who she is. Okay. So right after that live, although I already had planned how I was going to do the mirror challenge, I was like, maybe that's what I need to do. Plus I had some other people who were talking down at the bottom, in text, and they were like, yeah, I want to know more about Mama Catherine. I was like, okay, let's do that. Took my diorama, very minimally based, put a chair right there, put a mirror right there. Boom, let's have her talk to the mirror. She's talking to her reflection. And then in talking to her reflection, she's saying like her background. This is what I know. I was abused. I had to live, with my grandmother. I really don't know how to be happy. Thank you. She said it worked. Yes, that would be amazing. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Danny, Poppy, and Barbie said it worked. I appreciate that. So I used something minimally. I used this basic diorama. I used a chair and a mirror. And I just kept, positioning it to get different angles. Use what you have. Even if you're like, I don't have like a closet and the ties and the lamp and the, all this other, different props, photo props to make it work. Don't let that stop you. Let the dialogue propel you. Because right then, quite honestly, it was actually best to have less, because then you could read what she had going on inside of her. She didn't need a whole lot. In fact, probably having a whole lot of other stuff would have distracted you from reading what was going on inside of her. Why she acts the way she does. And even the guy she was with is married. That guy was married, Joe. He was married. So she has a lot of stuff going on with her. And she's gone through a whole lot to where she's she's literally having identification issues. She can't really identify with who she is. And that has a lot to do with how she treats Gloria, a lot to do with how she treats Brenda, a lot to do with how she treats Courtney, a lot to do with how she treats Curtis, a lot to do with how she treats her own self, because of the abuse and the struggle that she's gone through. Where do you pull these stories from? Real life. Some of it's real life. Some of it is, what I see on TV. I was a huge Jerry Springer fan growing up, especially like back in the day when we were growing up, like when Jerry Springer first came out. Come on now. Those stories seem authentic. Those were some real legit stories. Now, I don't know. I mean, is he still coming out? I know like Steve has a show. I don't know if he has a show or not, but I think he does. I think Jerry Springer still comes out. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. We were all about that, right? Like, I remember I would have to come home. They do still come out. She said, yes, they do. Wow. I would have to come home because I had a harsh situation with my administration. I've said that before on this live. And at least once or twice a month, I'd be home. And I remember sitting there with my hot water bottles and stuff and Tylenol, whatever else. What was the other stuff we used to take? It wasn't Advil. It was like Midol, I think, back in the day. And I would sit there in the living room and have the TV on watching Jerry Springer. In high school, that was the thing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this day wisely. Since I got to come home early, I'm not feeling good. I got to go through this, female situation. Let me watch me something that's going to count. And I'd watch Jerry Springer. And I will admit, that was something that my grandmother and I had bonded on. She watched Jerry Springer, and I enjoyed watching it too. And so some of the stuff that, that I can get from storylines could be from a Jerry Springer show. It may be something that was already replayed. That's like we said before, it can be a plot that was already done before. But it's like something that was done like in a soap opera that I enjoyed. Or it may be something that I see when I go to the store. Or like it may be something like I got a storyline going on right now. Because I am in school. I got a couple classes that I'm taking, and I have one professor that is quite hilarious in his antics. And I say that really being sarcastic because I'm a wife and a mother, and I feel like he thinks that I have all day to just spend on his class as if I was 17 again. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. So I'm like, I need you to understand I'm an adult taking your class. Nonetheless, I can look at him and say, okay, I can build a character off of you. If the least thing I could do, I can build a character off of you. Barry of Winds 2001 said housewives are great too. So the show Housewives, great opportunity to look at that and say, how can I incorporate that into my storyline? So look around you. Some of the stuff that you're going to get storyline wise may be something that personally affects you. Some of the stuff that you get story wise can be off of a TV. Some of the things that you get may be out of a book. Some of the stuff that you may get may be from a best friend or a friend that you have or had who went through things. I told you guys before, Courtney's storyline really does come from a childhood best friend that I had and the stuff that she went through, and being able to incorporate that into my storyline because it affected me too. Not as much as it did with her because that was, affecting her directly. But it did affect me because I love her. And, even though we don't talk right now, we've just kind of grown apart. Our lives are separate. I still love her to this day. That's still, an important person to me. We were friends from second grade on. And I just always felt like she went through so much for being a kid. And then I look at my own life and it's like, you went through a lot as far as being a kid too. So, you can pull from what pull from people that and what they've gone through, pull from people that you see at the store and they're waiting in line and some of the interactions that they have with each other, and be able to build a storyline from that by asking those questions. And this is something that my husband always talks to me about. He's like, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Like, he's really, really big about that. And it's so important for whatever you're doing to ask those questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Ask yourself that. And it can create such rich storylines. So if you see someone in line and it's a husband and wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend and, like partners and they're together and they got like a little kid or something like that and they're talking, or it can even be mother and daughter. Oh my God, I've built such great storylines in my head off of mother and daughter. A lot of the books that I have, I am an indie author. Like I said earlier, pseudonym R.K. Lemons Weber. Check it out on Amazon. But you will see I have a whole lot of writings about mothers and daughters. That's a really important thing to me. I'm an only child. It was always my mother and myself. So I build storylines based off of off of my experience in that. And I don't feel bad about it because I see other people and I'll see their interactions and I'm like, oh my God, you're going through mother-daughter syndrome. Or you're going through son and daughter syndrome. I used to watch Smothered for a little while because I was like, oh my God, it relates to me. Right? But you can create a whole lot of storylines off of that. You see someone in line as a mother and daughter, and you can start asking those questions. The what if, what, where, when, how, why, those questions. Even if, like, the mother is saying, I wanted you to buy broccoli. Why didn't you buy the broccoli? I thought you picked up the broccoli. And she's like, because, I didn't know that we were going to need the broccoli. I got the canned greens, the canned green beans. I thought that you said it was okay. And then just building that storyline off of what you hear right there. Like, what are they like when they're at home? Do they live in the same house? Do they live next to each other? Is she coming and she's visiting from out of state? You ask yourself those questions and you can literally build a storyline from that. And you can take your dolls to embody those people. Maybe they're in your storyline just for that one time. Or maybe they become a temporary character or characters in your storyline, or even permanent characters. So that will become your decision as a writer. Just like I said with the Stan Lee, he was like, it's whoever the writer decides to win. It's whatever you decide. It's your storyline. We may influence your storyline, our excitement about your characters, but overall, it's up to you. You write the storyline that's true to you. Dialogue is important. Don't worry about the props. Let the storyline speak. And if you have the props to go with it, do it. If you got the dollhouse, you got the diorama, you got the facade, whatever it is, let it do it. But if you don't have it, don't let that stop you from taking the pictures and writing the story. Okay? So dialogue is the things that the characters say to one another in the story. Just in case someone's like, what is dialogue? It's the things that they say. It's the conversation that they have. And the dialogue can go even deeper than that as far as the conversation that your own character says to their self. What do they say? What's their internal dialogue? The one that I just shared with you with Mama Catherine and her talking to the mirror, that was an internal dialogue. She wasn't really talking to anybody but herself. And it moved the story. Now, by the time that she talks to Joe, we hear her having the conversation with him. They dialogue. That moves the story along because then we learn, oh snap, he's married. That's kind of scary. But no judgment. Let's not judge. Although we can sit here and say like, for me personally, no, I don't want to be in a situation with a married man. But I do know that things do happen. How do I know? Because I've seen it happen in my family before. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not judging anyone if they're in that kind of situation, if they've been in that kind of situation. But do know it is realistic. So by creating a story in which we have Mama Catherine, who's with Joe, who's married, and she just got done spilling out her heart to us in her soliloquy, we then learn some things about her through her internal dialogue. And there were so many people, thank you for commenting, who were just like, wow, poor Catherine, I didn't know she went through that. And those comments, that feedback is what really did confirm to me, like, yeah, that needed to come out. Yes, that helped move the story along for her character. So that people could understand she's not just like this cynical, mean, horrible character, although she can be mean. She has said some things to Raymond that I'm like, wow, oh my God, I didn't know you were going to say that. And just, I let it flow because it was important to get the character's voice out. So she can be mean, but understanding that the root of this comes from somewhere. The root of this. One of the classes that I'm taking, like I told you, I'm in school. One of the classes that I happen to be taking right now is for yoga. So I'm really excited because very, very soon your girl's going to be a yogi. I'm excited. My husband has been pushing me to do this because he's a personal trainer. And he was like, we could do this together. So I just said about the importance of being involved with each other's gifts and talents and, learning things about yourself. I've always been about, exercise, very, very proactive about working out. My lifestyle is a little bit different now because I've got 10 kids and I do homeschool, so things are different. I'm not able to like hit the gym like I used to, or go out to the park and go running and, just doing my thing like I used to do. I have to be very strategic in my time for myself. And even with that, kids can be very unpredictable and really, want to use up your available space of time for themselves. So just being honest. So it's kind of hard to really squeeze in that self time. And then by the time that you have a breather, sometimes you don't want to smash it out with crunchies or whatever the case is. When we met, my husband and I was a school teacher, and I was teaching dance, and I worked out personally, and I did Pilates, and I just was really, really just like this. I guess I was on my way to being like a fitness guru. I was like really enjoying it. I was all about dance, and, like outside of teaching in school, it was just like dance, dance, dance. And life happens, life changes. But I'm thankful to come to this place right now where I am learning how to become a yogi and how to, embody the spiritual essence of being one with my spiritual self and higher self, and having stronger connection with the one. So that's what I'm looking forward to and what I'm doing right now. And I bring that up only because it's so important to make sure that your characters are able to express themselves through who you are. Who you are is going to come through your characters, right? And what you know is going to come through them. So what may not seem like a whole lot to you, you're like, okay, I'm putting this dialogue, but I really don't think it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. And you can really move your story along with the conversations that are said. Things that the characters say to one another in a dialogue makes a difference. And just lastly, description. What we think about a person or a place affects the way that we feel about it and what we might do. The language that tells the reader how things are, looks, sounds, and feels is essential to your storyline. It is so important that you allow your readers, your viewers, to be able to come into the world of the 1/6 scale storyline. Don't leave us hanging. Invite us in, welcome us in, keep us in tune with what's going on with your storyline, okay? And you can do that, like I said, in so many different ways. And we who are involved in this particular doll community, we have the amazing and awesome advantage of being able to use our dolls for the tangible realism of our photos, to where people don't have to guess where the table was positioned. Like, okay, it was on the right side of Gloria. Okay, where would that be at? Well, they can like literally see. This is her right side. Okay, so they can see it. And that's a wonderful gift that we get by being able to do our photos the way that we do. And I'm just very, very thankful for you guys being on here with me, spending this time with me. We're now at 101, and I am going to be actually signing on off because we have spent 2 amazing hours together. Thank you so much for joining. If you just joined, definitely go back and review this. Go ahead, like I said, save this video. Save this video, and I want to challenge you. Go back to my old videos. I started in February of 2021 and had an amazing dialogue and conversation with at My Little Curvy World. And from there have just been able to meet some fantastic administrators of this page, many of which are introverts like myself. Can you believe it? Your girl is an introvert. Hi, Barbie Size Life of Vinla. I am so looking forward to conversating with you. Her page is awesome. Check it out, Barbie Size Life of Vinla. But I've had a wonderful opportunity to talk to many who are introverts like myself, who have come out of their shell for the first time in order to talk to me on live. And some of them, it may not be their first time, but they came out here, they said yes, and we talked, we dialogued, we chatted about their storylines, and had amazing conversations about how they do the thing in which they do to get their characters to shine bright. So I want you guys, as a challenge, to go back, read those, listen to those lives, and be able to jot down any notes that's going to be able to help you as you explore your storyline with your characters. So I want to thank you again. Hi, dear. Waiting for our chat too. Yes, yes, yes. In the meantime, like I said, check out Barbie Size Life of Vinla Page is awesome. Storyline is just so relatable. Conversations that the girls have, you're like, wow, I had a conversation like that before. The guys' conversations, very realistic. I very much enjoy it. It's just, it is such a very impassionate perspective about things. And I enjoy your storyline. I do. You know that though. You know that. I enjoy your storyline, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So without further ado, we are now at 1:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, you're welcome. I thank you. I thank you for sharing it. Don't let your story hide. Whoever you are, and you've got a storyline inside of you, and you may feel kind of conscientious because you're like, I don't really know how many people are going to like it. I don't know if I have everything prop wise in order to, put my message out there. Just do it. Just do it. Do it with what you have. We'll enjoy it. Your storyline will come out, be it in the dialogue and the plot and the setting. It'll come out. And if you don't get a chance to get the full story out, just start and it'll come out. Things that I'm writing about my character Tony, I had some of those ideas early on, didn't have everything that I needed to put him out there. But I still wrote. I still took the pictures. And now that things are coming together even more and I'm able to get different materials together and different dolls and make it work, it's happening in a way even greater than what I imagined. So just start. Allow yourself to start. You're going to enjoy it so much. So I want to remind you guys, remember, anyone can write. Everyone that I've had on here, including myself, we all have different backgrounds in writing, but we're able to do it because we enjoy our dolls. We enjoy being able to put the story out there that our dolls are speaking to us. And we are just thankful, including myself, thankful that it's having such a positive impact on you. So make sure that you do the same with your storyline, even if it's just one post. Maybe you don't have a linear storyline or leaner storyline such as I do. Maybe you have a storyline where it's just, you put out 1 or 2 posts as a story and the rest are just, photos of nature, photos of a field trip, photos of fashion. That's okay. It's your page. You do what you want to do, like that song says. But if you have a story in you, let it out. Speak it through your characters. Thank you again. I appreciate you. I thank you. Thank you for all your prayers and positive energy. And I will see you again on Saturday. So look for my virtual flyer. Okay? Thank you again. Bye.